So I want to start by just saying this is actually like a really huge topic to talk about the nervous system. And so I'm teaching you a tiny little piece, right? A little bit about the nervous system so that you can kind of chew on it and like see what comes up for you, see what's interesting to you, okay? And I want you to think about what we talk about in this presentation through the lens of breath and movement, right? My entire course is based on movement and the breath, right? And sometimes breath and movement are going together, right? We know that breath affects the regulation of your nervous system, and it also affects the operation of your internal organs themselves, right? A little review of the adolescent brain and kind of what you have going on in this time in life as you're going through adolescence. You have your prefrontal cortex, which is not fully developed, but you have your limbic system that's deep in the brain that is fully developed. And this is your older version of the brain, the lower brain versus the upper brain, the lizard brain versus the wizard brain, right? And so this presentation is taking that concept of the adolescent brain and how it's easy to flip your lid and really be in your emotions and not be able to control them, or not be able to plan ahead or think about consequences and stuff like that. So this presentation is going to help you understand the why behind when you do take a deep breath and you feel more calm, what is happening there, right? When you do cardio and you have that increased circulation of those feel-good hormones, those endorphins, like, why is that? What's happening in your body? What's happening more specifically in your autonomic nervous system, right? So this is a very simplified way of looking at the nervous system, okay? You can take a whole course in college probably just on the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system, among other subtle ways of looking at systems in the human body, right? I want you to think of this I want you to get this very simple concept down, right? The sympathetic nervous system is associated with fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, okay? So it's the get up and go side, right? If you didn't have a sympathetic nervous system, you'd probably never get out of bed in the morning, okay? It's not a bad thing, right? Neither one of these are bad or good, okay? So let's get past the bad and good labels. So your sympathetic nervous system is what keeps you safe from the saber-toothed tiger, but it's also the same thing that, a math test causes that spike in stress hormones, and you go into the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and then your brain doesn't work anymore because you're trying to take the test and it's stressing you out, right? Or when you're eating a lot of fast and processed food and sugar every day, that can also stress out your system, and you have this underlying kind of like ongoing chronic stress, right? Which we've looked at other videos in my course about. So sympathetic nervous system, coping mechanisms, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. We're going to go more into those. Parasympathetic nervous system. This is your rest and digest. This is your kick back and chill nervous system. When you're feeling calm, you are more in your your parasympathetic nervous system is more activated versus your sympathetic, or you're finding some balance, right? So how do you activate the parasympathetic nervous system? You can activate it through the breath. And
Have you run away from a saber-toothed tiger?
You can watch that video. And I want to remind you, the video is not like tailored to young people. It's talking more about adults, but you all have adults in your life that are stressed out that you can observe. And I want you to think about this when you watch that video in the context of what you see in your life with other adults. What do you notice? So have you heard of these responses before? Have you heard of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, right? Like I said, this is a huge topic of information. I'm not expecting you to take all of this in, but I want you to maybe just look at some of the words on this slide and think about freeze, collapsing, can't move, shame, shutting down, depression. That's a coping mechanism that sometimes keeps you safe, right? But when we're talking about 21st century experiences, right? Maybe somebody like says something to you, rude, maybe it's on one of these things, okay, on a smartphone, and they comment and you feel depressed, you feel shut down, you feel hopeless, you feel shame. That can happen, right? In a virtual space. It can happen in a real life space, right? What does fight feel like? Fight, right? Somebody makes that comment about you. Maybe you react with anger, frustration, irritation. Maybe you show your anger. That's fight, right? Flight is, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm going to just get out of here. I'm going to get out of harm's way. I'm going to, delete my account. I'm going to delete the friend or whatever, right? Panic, anxiety is flight, right? Worry, concern, right? Like kind of going over it in your head over and over again, right? And then fawn is not really on here, but fawn is when instead of like being mad at the person that made the comment about you, you actually go give them a hug and you're like, oh, hey, and you're like trying to win them over. And you're like extra nice to the person who was actually mean to you. It's this weird phenomenon that's totally true, right? So when we're trying to engage socially with other human beings, we want to feel safe. We want to feel calm and like grounded and curious and open and compassionate, right? Mindful in the present moment with the person, right? So the idea, this is polyvagal theory. And again, like I could probably teach a whole college course on that, but that's not what this is. I'm just giving you kind of little pieces to look at, right? So we all as human beings experience trauma to varying degrees. And sometimes it's a daily thing. Like maybe there's a kid that walks to school every day and every day there's another kid who, thinks it's funny to trip him before he walks into the classroom. Like that's a traumatic experience. It's a very small one. Actually, starting with the day that we're born, we're going through traumatic experiences. Like birth is one of the most infamous kind of, traumatic experiences. Even if it was just a normal birth, it's still like a very intense thing that happens, right? So life is such that you're always going to have things happen. Okay. How are you reacting to these things, right? This is a slide I want you to maybe think about the people in your life, think about the adults in your life, right? And just notice where they are. Are they a workaholic? Are they a bully? Do they disassociate and kind of ignore you? Do they try to just like get in your face overwhelmingly and feel like kind of clingy to you? Okay, here's another visual that you can look at. When you're in threat, when your nervous system is in threat, you can feel these feelings, okay? When it's in safety, you can feel these feelings, right? But it's still the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system working together. In safety, you feel joy. And when you're fighting, when you're in fight, but you're in safety, you have drive, you have motivation, you're getting stuff done, right? When you're under threat, you actually are feeling anger and frustration, right? So again, when you're safe, you can do flight, right? By strategizing and having direction, right? Versus having these. So again, it's not a positive or a negative place. It's just a matter of if you are regulated in your nervous system, right? So again, the polyvagal theory, this is the theory that you have. So the vagus nerve runs through your whole body and it connects all of your internal organs and your brain and your spine, right? And your autonomic nervous system it's all linked in there. So this nerve can be stimulated by breath. That's why taking a deep breath can help you feel calm. It's because you're actually stimulating the vagus nerve. Okay, so that this kind of is showing you this diagram, right? It's actually connected to all of your internal organs, right? We've watched this video on one of the assignments, the effects of chronic stress on the body, right? Tips to regulating your nervous system is another assignment,
Remember the
course. And we've also practiced the 3-part breath in the course. This is another practice you can do to regulate, to stimulate your vagus nerve and therefore regulate the nervous system. Here's another slide with lots of different breath exercises to try out, right? These are all short. Now, Nadi Shodhana is another one, and we'll try this again another day, but if you want to try it ahead of time, you can check out on this slideshow, right? It's a calming breath. practice. We've got a couple shake it off practices here that you can try, right?
Hello, Earth citizens.
Shaking the body and using breath, using movement. That's why when people exercise, they get those endorphins, right? They're doing this left, right, like runners. I mean, it's like a meditation for them. A lot going on in the brain. And if you're interested in the brain, we're going to talk more about the brain a little bit in our next episode, right? But this was like the shortest, quickest overview of the nervous system. And I hope you got something out of it. What I'm encouraging you to do is use this information to just start making observations about yourself, about other people, and then maybe you can kind of figure out what that means and how that might help you in relationship with other people too. So please drop your comments in the chat, in the YouTube comments, in the email, get in touch. Let me know. I want to start some conversations here.